Hi guys, and welcome to another video from Stupid as the Norm, the channel where we demonstrate how to become a millionaire in 10 years on minimum wage. And in this video, it is the 16th of April 2023. I'm going to give you an update as to where I am on my journey. Now, this update of my journey so far is a précis of a presentation I did to the Property Investors Northeast Property Seminar last week. And so, not surprisingly, it starts with an introduction. So hi everyone, thanks for coming. My name is Perry Wilson. I have no slides, I have no skills, I have no qualifications. What I do hope I have is an interesting story. You see, 4.5 years ago, at age 57, I was working behind a bar on minimum wage. I had no cash in the bank and I had £10,000 with a credit card debt. Fast forward to today, 4.5 years later, and by the end of this year, I expect my unearned income from property rents to be around £100,000. Would anyone like to know how I did it? Well, I haven't always earned minimum wage. I've been fortunate to have some stellar jobs in the past. Started my career at age 16, did 12 years in the Royal Navy, did 7 years in politics. I've dined at 10 and 11 Downing Street. I've been head of business development for a large mortgage packaging company. Mortgage packagers don't exist anymore, not since 2008. I've been CEO of a foreign property sales company, and I've been a sales director for what I think is, or what is still, or was still, the UK's only property franchise. So they're the high points of my career, but obviously life isn't full of high points. You have low points as well. So I'm happy to share those with you because I have, in order to feed my family, resorted to singing in bars and restaurants. I've sold hooky clothes from a market stall, and I've been a car park attendant. And as I go through this presentation, one of the things I'm going to give you is some of the tips I've learned through my life. And here's the first tip. And that is, your route to success is not linear. You won't go from A to B going up all the time. There will be some peaks and troughs on the way. So just be prepared on your own particular journey for life to beat you down somewhere along there. But it doesn't matter, because as long as you keep focused on your goal, heading towards your goal relentlessly, you will achieve that goal. So expect the troughs to be there. You're going to be beaten down. For me, the measure of a person is not how many times you get knocked down, but how many times you get back. And you should always get back up. So how did I end up at age 57 working behind a bar on minimum wage? Well, just being normal really. Whilst I've made some good money through my lifetime, I've spent some good money as well. As fast as it came in, it went back out. And that wasn't unusual. I was just being normal. I was being stupid. You can find people like I was back then on any housing estate in the UK. You drive around, you'll find some nice semis, 2 or 3 cars on the drive, 2 foreign holidays a year, most of it funded by personal debt. And I was no different. I was just being normal and average. So at age 57, I found myself in one of life's troughs and recognized that my plan to let the universe recognize my genius and just give me £1 million wasn't working, evidently. So I needed a new goal. So I set myself a goal of becoming wealthy. I think everybody wants to be wealthy. Whilst some people say, money isn't everything. If I ask for a show of hands in the room here today, all those who want less money, nobody puts their hands up. So I think it's a little disingenuous to say you don't want to be wealthy. I always wanted to be wealthy. So I thought to myself, well, what is wealth? What is wealthy? It's different for everybody. Everybody's number will be different. So it can't be a number, it must be something else. And I figured it was a feeling that if you felt wealthy, so if you had no money ever in your life and somebody give you £10,000, you'd feel wealthy. So I thought, hang on, what is it that I would have to feel, do or experience in order to think I was wealthy? So I came to the conclusion that if I was sat on a yacht moored in some Greek harbour and holding a margarita in my hand as the sun went down, and I had enough cash in the bank to fund that lifestyle, that I would feel wealthy. So what I did, I costed it. I figured I can get a second-hand 50-foot Beneteau for 100,000, and I've had 200,000 in the bank. That would be enough to fund that lifestyle, and I would feel wealthy. So that was my original goal. So I had my goal. Now I needed a plan. And here's another top tip. If you have a goal but don't have a plan to achieve the goal, you don't really have a goal. What you have there is a wish, a dream, a prayer. And as a grown-up, you should know those don't come true. So in order to make the goal a reality, you need a plan. So my plan was to open up a pension and then put sufficient money in there to achieve that 300,000 in the 10 years. Why a pension? Well, that's because that's what you're told to do. That's the message the government gives out. That's the message school gives out. That's the message you're given when you get your first job, because you have to enroll, you're auto-enrolled into a workplace pension. And I was no different from everyone else, so that's what I did. I opened up a pension. Mark Twain once said, if ever you find yourself on the side of the majority, it's time to pause and reflect. So that's what I did. I looked at my pension after about 6 or 9 months. I realized I'm not getting any further and I didn't feel wealthier, so this wasn't working. So here's another tip. If you want to do something remarkable. If you want to be one of the 10%, then you can't behave like the 90%. So I withdrew my money from my pension, having paid somebody £900 to put it in, a financial salesperson. I withdrew that and decided I was going to get into property. Why property? Well, I'm going back 4.5 years now. We were still feeling the effects of the 2008 banking crisis. And I figured that interest rates were going to stay really, really low for a really, really long time. Got that wrong. So somebody once said, what's the best way to eat an elephant? Well, the answer is one bite at a time. So what I did was I broke my £300,000 original goal down to little bite-sized chunks. And the first waypoint on the way there was to become financially independent. That is to have my unearned income cover my bills. And my bills in the house are about £1,000 a month, so I needed something to generate £1,000 a month. Now I looked at properties, and I figured and I looked at the returns we were getting from properties at that time with that interest rate. And I reckon if I saved up £20,000, I could buy a £63,000 property, nice 2-bed, semi-3-bed terrace on Teesside, and that would kick out £550. So with the mortgage fees and the management fees off, I would come out with £400 on a per property. And because I needed £1,000, therefore I needed 3 of these properties, and therefore I needed to save £60,000. Now I could break that 3-house goal down to even a smaller goal, which is to buy the first house. So to buy the first house, I had to generate £20,000, and I was working, as I said, behind a bar on minimum wage. So what I first did was I was doing night shift, back shift from 5:30 to half midnight. So that left me the daytime to do something else. So I took up cab driving during the day. And for 3 months, I worked at 7 o'clock in the morning until 4:30 as a cab driver, then 5:30 to half midnight in the pub. And I did that for about 3 months. When I stopped doing that, and I figured it's a much easier life than just to be a taxi driver and work 80 hours a week, because at least I was just sat on my backside talking to people. Easy job to do, stress-free. So that's what I did. I worked for 80 hours a week. That's almost 2 full-time jobs as a cab driver. I worked for 2 years solid, taking only 4 days off, Christmas Day and Boxing Day, both days, until I'd saved £20,000. My savings from working 80 hours a week as a cab are £1,300 a week. So it took me nearly 2 years to do that. And then I had enough money to buy my first property. So I took the £20,000, bought the first property. That increased my income by £400. So now I was making, this is 2 years into the game, £1,700 a month savings. Then I had a bit of an epiphany, because my goal was £300,000. And when I was saving all this money, £1,700 a month, I realized I'd undershot, and that I could achieve something much greater than £300,000. So after 2 years in, I changed the goal to become a millionaire in 10 years. So the goal now was, from this stage, 2 years in, to make £1 million in 10 years on minimum wage. So I just about completed on my first property, and I was sat in a bar with my best mate, and he had his own business, and he says, Perry, I might need an extra pair of hands this weekend. Any chance you can come in and maybe on a Friday come and give us a hand? And I said, I can't do that, mate, because I'm seeing a solicitor. He says, oh, are you in trouble? I says, no, I'm just buying a house. Oh, I didn't know you were moving, he said. I said, well, I'm not moving, I'm just buying another house. Ah, and what are you going to do, rent it out? I says, yeah. He says, I should have done that years ago. He said, I'll tell you what, why don't we buy a property together? And I said, well, I'd love to do that, mate, but I've just spending all my money. I've saved 2 years on this property. I'm skint. He says, that's not a problem. I've got loads of money. I'll buy the first one. I'll use my funds to buy the first one. And then when you saved up enough money, we can buy the second one. And you can pay for that one. So that's what we did. And 3 months later, I had another property, and I didn't put any money into it. And it increased my savings, because I'm halving it with him now by another £200 a month. So my savings were now £1,900 a month. Now here's a tip. Tell everybody what you're doing. You don't have to be as Spartan as me and go start a YouTube channel, but tell everyone what you're doing, what your goal is, and why you're working hard. A lot of people say you shouldn't do that, you should keep your goals to yourself. I think it's the opposite. You should tell people what you do. Why? Because, well, they'll hold you to account, because every time they see you, they'll come and say, how's that little goal going, mate? Because they want you to fall over. And the second thing is, it could show up some opportunities, which it did in this case for me. So tell everyone what you're doing. So another year later, and 3 years in, I'd saved up enough to buy my third property, and at that stage I was now making £9,000 a month, and that covered all my bills, and I'd reached financial independence in 3 years on minimum wage. So then into my 4th year, my savings rate was £2,300 a month, and the 2-year mortgage the fixed rate I took out on the first property come to an end, and I refinanced, pulling out the original deposit and acquisition cost. So I pulled out £21,000 in the second year out the first property. So I owned the property without having a penny in there myself. I had 21,000 in the bank, and I was saving 2,300 a month. So throughout the journey had only been peaks so far, and then comes along the first trough, because that first property I bought manifested a damp problem. It was a condensation caused by people keeping the windows closed because it was over winter time, and not putting the heating on because heating prices had gone through the roof. And I had a few guys come in and check the property, and they said, well, it's one of the only 3 left in the street without a roof. There's no membrane, there's no felt between the rafters and the tiles. If we put extractor fans in, it would just suck in air from outside and the roof wouldn't do any good. We need to replace the roof and then do some remedial work on the plaster and what have you, come to £10,000. So I had a choice. Whilst I had about £34,000 in the bank ready for my next purchase, I didn't want to take the money out. So what I did instead was, do you remember I said I had £10,000 of credit card debt right at the beginning? I just paid it off in January, and now it's April, and I borrowed it back again to pay for this. I'm not saying this is advice. Nothing I do is advice. All I do is tell you how I did it. So I funded that for a loan from the Halifax Bank, another loan, to start a £10,000 loan over 5 years at £220 a month. Another trough. Gradually over the last year or two, interest rates have been going up, and I wasn't making so much money from a buy-to-let, so I needed to change the plan. The goal remains the same. It's going to be a millionaire in 10 years. But the plan has to change because I'm not generating enough income. I also decided to make my next purchase through a limited company. So I set up a limited company, and that's because the next purchase will take me into the 40% bracket, what with my earnings from taxi driving and the previous 3 buy-to-lets. So I didn't want that to happen and pay 40% on profits. So I formed a limited company, and I decided to go into serviced accommodation. Why serviced accommodation? Well, you need a bit more money to go into, but the returns are massive. I'm now waiting on the mortgage offer on my first serviced accommodation, 4.5 years in. The numbers are, it's going to take me 40 grand to get into it. That doesn't include the setting up costs for the limited company and what have you. You've got to put furniture in, and it's a bigger house, so it's more deposit and more stamp duty. So I'm working on 40,000, but the rental figures are about 105, 110 pounds a day. So 3,300 a month, which will net down to about 1,300 a month income out of it. So hopefully by June, that'll be online. June this year, in 2 months time, that'll be online. I'm kicking out 1,000, 1,300, somewhere between there. If I add that to my 3 buy-to-let income and my earned income, savings rate is now 3,000, or will be from then 3,700 a month. So by the end of this year, hopefully I'll have saved enough to buy a second serviced accommodation. Now, if I don't have the money by the end of this year, I have another plan. I've approached my youngest daughter and I said, do you remember you offered to lend me some money some time ago? She said, yeah. I said, I might need it at the end of the year. In return, I don't want a loan. What I'm going to do, I'm going to give you shares in a different company. And so whatever money you put in there, you will own the proportion of shares proportionate to the money you put into it. So what she said, rather wisely, by the way, she's not stupid. She says, I'm happy to do that, but let's see how the first one goes. And I want to see how the first one goes as well. So she's very wise. So top tip here is that you don't have to do this by yourself, guys. You're not on this journey by yourself. In fact, I'm told by those who are further down the line than me that the bigger the projects, the bigger the jobs you get involved in, the more people you need to partner with or joint venture with. So you don't have to do it by yourself. If you want to do it with a mate or a family member, then that's fine too. So let's look forward 9 months to the end of the year, and let's assume that I've got the 2 serviced accommodations in place. The income from their unearned income, that is gross rents, should be around about, from the 2 of them, £6,500. I've got 1,550 from the 3 buy-to-lets. So that will take my unearned income about £100,000 by the end of the year. All done in 5 years whilst earning only minimum wage. So now let's look forward a further 5 years. Bit of crystal ball gazing here, because we're going into the unknown, a bit of conjecture. Who knows what the future will bring? But if things remain the same-ish, and I keep on buying, I think I'll buy next year, I'll buy 1 more property and then 2, have enough income coming in to buy 2 more serviced accommodations thereafter for the remaining 4 years after that. So looking forward, I think there'll be 12 serviced accommodation properties, 11 or 12. I think I'll obviously still have the first 3 buy-to-lets I bought, and I project that gross income will be about £500,000 a year at that stage, netting down to about 16,000 a month. All done in 10 years was earning only minimum wage. And then I took some questions from the floor. So that's it, guys. That's where I am today. If you've got any comments, any questions, please hit them below. In the meantime, don't be stupid and don't be normal.